Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Success Grid podcast. I have a special guest today. Lian Lai Lakaba is the CEO and co-founder of 2XU, a remote executive assistant service company that specializes in working with creative entrepreneurs in packaging that chaotic entrepreneurial genius with a highly trained executive assistant. Lian, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. So let me first start by your story, because I know that you've been working at a young age and you are basically now a CEO at a very young age. So tell us a little about you and how did you reach this level, kind of.
Yeah, so I started working online as a freelance writer when I was 15 years old. It was something that I kind of did for fun, kind of did so I could buy books online. That was my goal. And then at 18 years old, I finally went full time with a company. And then that's kind of where a lot of the journey started. The company that I joined, it was a US company. I was a book editor, and then I got started getting exposed with a lot of self-development books, courses, and to the point where my boss at that time, he said like, hey, we're opening up other companies, we need someone to run the publishing company. And I just raised my hand like, I want to do it. And that's kind of how a
Just
lot of
ask
my
who
entrepreneur
wants to run the company.
yeah. At that time I was already manager, so I was part of the conversation already, of because basically the other managers at that time, they were going to start the other companies that he wanted to do, and they needed someone to take care of the publishing company when they did that. So a lot of my entrepreneur journey kind of started there, of being trained to be CEO of someone else's company, and then it got to that point where I was already giving someone else the same mentorship and the tutoring basically that was given to me, and someone else took over the publishing company. So it's like, okay, what's next? So I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to see how a business is started from scratch. And that's what I did with 2XU. I partnered with that same boss, who's now my co-founder. He's mostly stepped away at this point, but I wanted to see how to grow. And yeah, I ended up starting up 2XU at 23, and now I'm almost 26. So it's been a very interesting journey so far.
Cool, very cool at a young age at this space. So basically, now with 2XU, you do help entrepreneurs and businesses like hire virtual assistants, right? This is the core main thing for it. So now, usually, people who have companies would like to sometimes hire, I don't know, maybe some people they know.
Yeah.
So how do you basically help the entrepreneurs or business owners to hire a virtual assistant?
So our service is very specific to, you're not just hiring a virtual assistant, you're hiring an executive assistant or your second in command. That's kind of the way that our service works. It's where we hiring, managing, and growing executive assistants to kind of become like head of operations or general manager in someone else's business. So a lot of what we do is we bring a lot of value to both the executive assistant and the client. We do like coaching with the assistant. We make sure that they have we basically have them go through a little bit of a business school to give them the basics of like, okay, this is how we can help run this person's company. And at the same time, we give consulting with our clients to say, okay, this is how you can get the most of out of your assistant at the same time. So we really work both ways of, it's not just we're giving you an assistant, we're giving you an assistant plus all of these other benefits to make sure that this relationship can work.
Yeah, exactly. Because if, for example, I wanted something to get done like now, I might, for example, hire someone who's freelancing, freelancer. So do business owners or entrepreneurs know exactly that they want this executive assistant and not just a freelancer? Because a freelancer might be for a job, but an executive assistant would be mainly a part of the company, right?
It's, usually that's the main thing that we want to make sure that's clear, is this is someone who's full-time. This is someone who working 40 hours a week for you, who is training themselves and growing themselves while you're working with them.
Yeah, cool. So from your experience and working with people, uh, this is basically outsourcing, right? Because I am here in Jordan, I might be talking to someone or want to hire someone from the US or Philippines or whatever, or India. So
Yep.
can you tell us the reasons why that happens? Is it, for example, cheaper rates, and the mistakes that you see happening in that also?
So the main reason that outsourcing works is it basically, especially in the pandemic where you can't go into an office anyway, it has that sense of freedom that you're working from home or from a coffee shop or anywhere else, and your assistant is not in the same city as you. They may be in a whole other country. And the biggest appeal, it started as the biggest appeal being that it was cheaper than hiring someone locally, but it's evolved a lot to having the basically the cultural differences kind of help a little bit of making sure that the relationship works. So rather than having someone who is kind of who thinks like you have someone who might think a little bit differently, and because of that, it helps a lot. So the common mistakes that I see when it comes to outsourcing, the main one is expecting that their assistant is going to be able to do everything, but from bookkeeping to programming. That just doesn't happen. What I always advise is just choose three main tasks that you want your assistant to do, and then they'll start growing and taking over other tasks anyway. The second mistake that I see a lot is not then creating systems basically where things can be repeatable even without the assistant. Like a lot of a kind of inside joke that we have in our company is a lot of our clients say, I can't live without you, but the reality is because we help them create the documentation, the systems, they can technically live without the assistant. It's kind of just back to manual work. And the last common mistake that I see a lot is not investing back into people. Like the biggest reason why we're so successful is because we have them read books like How to Influence and Influence People, books like E-Myth, books like Mindset that changes the way that they think. So then they know that this is just more beyond another job that you're getting.
Yeah, the last point that you mentioned, I don't know, because they assume now, because the entrepreneur or the business owner assumes that I am hiring virtual, so that basically means that the rates or the salaries are lower than from where if I would hire someone from my country. So is there a big gap in, let's say, salaries or rates?
There is, and it's mostly it's not what people think. It's basically just the economy. Like someone in the US who is earning like $3,000 is considered like you barely can keep up. Someone in the Philippines who's earning $3,000, which is 150,000 pesos, has a really good life already. Like already probably has a house, has a car, just because like here compared to like prices, like here you can buy a house for about 10,000 US dollars. You can already buy a house or a condo, depending on where you're at. So the differences in just the economy here is just huge that you can, provide a really good life for someone who's in the Philippines, paying probably the same amount of like what would be, minimum wage in the US.
True. So now, if I would want to hire someone online, what are the things that I should be looking out for? Should I keep searching for better for companies and seeing that someone fits, or what is it that I should be looking for? For example, if I would like to hire someone, like for example, doing my social media.
So if you are thinking of just hiring someone, just a freelance person, then the main things you want to look out for is one, you want to make sure that you filter them. So a lot of people will say like, oh, I have, so and so experience in social media management, but you actually want to put that into a test. So we call that like a skills test. So we ask them like, hey, can you make just a 1 week, for example, on social media manager, 1 week plan, what it would look like to work with you. So they'll create like, oh, Monday is going to be motivation Monday, Tuesdays, blah, blah, blah. So you can see if they're actually capable of what it is that they say that they can do. The second one is making sure that you give time for the relationship to develop. Like a lot of people rush into like, oh, they have to be perfect from day one. But in the long run, that hurts both you and the employee because they have all of these things that they have to start learning about you and figuring out with your business. And when you start rushing like that, when you rush of I want to get everything done, you're not giving that time gap of making sure that they can catch up to where you're at. And the last hiring mistake that you can skip basically is then also putting in time for the interview. Like a lot of people tend to like, oh, their resume looks good, their application looks good, their skill test looks good. I'll just skip and not even interview them. But you need to have that one-on-one time to make sure that the personality is also a fit, because you might be hiring someone who lies all the time, but you didn't know because you just looked at their resume.
That CV doesn't tell that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give time for that, for like one-on-one like video call before even hiring that person.
Cool. So so basically you do some kind of skill tests for for them. What steps do you go through, and how much time, for example, it takes someone from putting their profile on your website, let's say, for example, and until you basically kind of approve him, right? Because you have a process. Because if someone says that I am good on sales and marketing or social media and don't do the skill test very well, I assume that they won't be there on the website to be hired. So what's exactly the process that you go through with that? And do you see a lot of people getting basically rejected, not being on your platform?
So the way that our own hiring process works, just kind of expanding on the skill test, is the first thing is we screen their resumes. Like if we basically outline like what are the first three tasks that the as client really wants to get done, or the three skills that they really need, and then we screen their resumes. After that, that's kind of the first like filter. Like, okay, clean out, these are the people that we're rejecting, these are the people who then get to the next level. After that, we actually do what we call just it's kind of like we call it just a handshake call. Basically, it's kind of like a screening where we call them up, we kind of learn more about them, like, hey, do you have experience in this, experience in that? Would you be okay being up at like 7 a.m. because the client needs you to be up at 7 a.m.? So it's kind of like the first other filtering, now based on the personality side. After that, then we send them the actual skills test, where they go, we basically build custom skills tests for every client that we have to make sure that it matches who they need. And then once they pass, like, okay, I look it over and I'm like, oh, this person seems really good, let's move on to the initial interview. So the initial interview is with me or another coach inside of the company, who basically knows what to look out for, knows like, okay, if they say this, that's a red flag, if they said this, that's a red flag, or if they say this, or when the biggest one, if when they ask for feedback, that's a person you should like take notice of if they're asking for feedback. So after that, we ask the client to review, does the final interview. And even after that, on the onboarding phase, I'm still filtering. I'm still seeing if they can be true to what they say, if, what time they come into meetings, to really make sure that they're the right person for our client. So it's a lot of filters, but in the end, like, we've so far out of the last 2 years that we've had 2XU, we've only really had 2 mismatches of client and assistant, and it's mostly because of outside reasons that we couldn't make the relationship work. But other than that, it's because of the so many filters that we put in to make sure that the assistant that we hire is actually the right one.
Oh, cool. So competition, how is the competition between your company and other companies similar to you? How do you read that?
So for us, and I've as a marketer myself, I've researched the heck out of our competitors, because that's the thing you do. You have to make sure that okay, how do you want to stand out? So far, it's been not bad. Like I've built so much of an abundance mindset that if a client ends up working with another like executive assistant company, we're okay with it. Like I've even referred clients who doesn't seem to be a match for what we need to other executive assistant or VA companies, just because I know that if they're a match, if they'll work out, they'll work out. We don't have to keep chasing, because we're literally helping people. The other term that I use for our assistants is you become their second brain. We're literally helping people develop to become their second brain, where the assistants talk as if they're, when they're emailing back and forth with their clients, it seems like, oh no, you're talking to him, don't worry, no, it's not the assistant, or commenting on LinkedIn as them. So that's kind of the magic there. Like, we can only make it work for people who want to make it work. So on competition wise, we're good, just because like I have that mindset of like, no, they want to, if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out, we're not going to force it.
Cool. So, in this type of business, what exactly the business model? How do you yourself make the money? Is it from the assistant or from the employer? How does that work? Or do you kind of get some kind of percentages?
So the way that our service works, because it is kind of just a full service, it's not just, again, hiring and handing you a VA. It's also managing and growing them. So the way that we've kind of mapped it out is we kind of have, at least at this point, it might change in a few years or a few months, maybe even, we have like a cap of how much we can pay the assistant to the point where we're break even. So because we have like courses, we buy them books, we get them software that they need, to be able to get started with the client. We've kind of figured out we have just a flat fee that we offer to our clients, and then the clients pay that every month, and we take care of like the payroll, their HMO, like their health insurance, and everything else that we have to do to take care of them as a Filipino employee.
Cool. So now, especially with COVID, and this year, 18 months, have you seen exponential growth in hiring the assistant virtually, or executive assistant virtually? How did you see the growth coming this year, last year, or 18 months, compared to the previous year, for example?
Basically, just compared to when we started, there's just been a lot of people who made the switch. At least 4 or 3 of our clients last year that we've gotten, their assistants basically just had like left, like had to take care of everything else within being work from home. They couldn't make it. They couldn't make it work. That's one of the reasons why they were looking for other ways that they could have an assistant for themselves. So it's grown a lot, especially like this year, that people are kind of settled in, like, okay, has to be work from home, has to be remote. It doesn't, we can find other ways where the assistant can work with us. So it's grown really well. And it's been very fun to see finally what I was looking for when I started 2XU, which is how does a business actually grow? So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Now I see that most these kind of businesses that you have are from East Asia. Do you see some companies start for example, in the US or UK, in these places, and provide the same kind of services? Or like we mentioned earlier, because of the difference in economies, it all mostly comes from East Asia and India, Philippines, your home, and these kind of places?
It's surprising. So again, stocking and looking at a competition. It's been interesting to see that both work. Like, I've seen so many really good assistant companies in the US, and I've seen really good companies here locally, and also I've seen a lot from different parts of the world. So it really depends on what an entrepreneur needs. Like, sometimes they really need someone who has the mindset of an American, so they'll hire a fellow American. If they need someone who works while they sleep, they're probably hiring from the Philippines, because then while it's like 8 p.m. their time, it's 8 a.m. here. So then their assistant can work while they sleep. So really, again, need depending on what they need, what does their business need. It's really a very anywhere in the world type of business.
Cool. So from your experience now, you are at a very young age now, basically a CEO. What would you say if someone asks you that they want to start something like a business online or even offline? From your experience, what would you advise them or recommend them to do first?
I guess the main thing that I would advise for someone who's starting all over again would be to get a mentor. That's been kind of the fastest way that I was able to grow, is since I partnered up with my old boss so he could consult me for free, basically, while I was still growing my business, because because of that, because of having someone that you can bounce ideas off of who has more experience than you, who also can give you like the perspective and the mindset of like, hey, you could be doing this more, or you should probably slow down on doing that. That has been kind of just the biggest way that I've been able to grow myself, is just having someone who can give me direct feedback of what to do and what not to do.
Cool. So you mentioned earlier books. You talked about the E-Myth and how to influence people. Influence people. The name of the book. So what books would you recommend, or what you personally read? What kind of books are favorite to you?
E-Myth is definitely if you want to be an entrepreneur, E-Myth definitely is a really good book to read, because it gives you. When I read E-Myth, that was when I was still being trained to be CEO, and that changed my mindset on like systems, changed my mindset on the value of people, and the different levels people are in. The second book that I would recommend is the book called 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. It is such a good book when it comes to managing people. I have recommended that book to literally anyone who says like, hey, I'm having a problem with my employee. Like, here, read this book. And usually like the next week when I see them after they read the book, like, my assistant is amazing, or my employee is amazing. And it's just because they read that book on how, basically it's a book on how to give like really good feedback so people can follow it. And probably the third book that I would recommend, so I just read a lot. I read an average of like 50 to 60 books a year.
Cool.
Yeah. It's actually probably how to influence people. Like it teaches you how to deal with different types of people. It teaches you how to, it's the concepts are so simple of like, remember people's name or smile, but you get so much value out of knowing, why should I do this and not that? Why should not criticizing actually help move things forward in a business? It's an oldie but goodie kind of book.
Yeah, cool books actually. But the problem is I never read any one of them. I don't know why, but especially the E-Myth. I know that, but I sometimes go to the bookstore and see it, but I never got it. But I should get it, at least that one. So yeah. But what you're doing is very special, because mostly people who are in this kind of business, you for example provide the support, the coaching, you give resources, so that's great. I don't think that many companies like you do that. Yeah, you are kind of unique in your approach, right? They just have, like, for example, the profiles for both employee and employer, and you can just choose and pick, and like kind of I guess maybe similar to Upwork. So what you're doing is cool actually. Yeah. So what would you say one takeaway for entrepreneurs or business owners who are looking to hire?
Hire before you're ready, and that's an advice that I've given so many times, because people were like, should I hire now, should I not hire? But the indication that you're ready to hire is once you have that point where you have a way to make money every month, like there's a recurring revenue already in your business, and you want to hire before you feel like you're ready, because it'll teach you so much about all the things you hold on to in your business. Like we try like, oh, only I can do this in my business, only I can do that part. But in reality, to free yourself up to really be an entrepreneur, in the book E-Myth, it actually teaches like the difference between a self-employed person and a business owner. And the main difference between the two is a business owner owns systems. A self-employed person is paid by the hour. So if you want to get to the point where you own systems, you need to have the right people with you to help build those systems with you.
Cool, awesome. Well, where can people get in touch with you, Leanne?
So the fastest way to get in touch with me is just with my email. It's just leanne@2xu.com, LEAN at 2xyou.com, or just by checking out our website, 2xu.com.
Well, awesome. 2x.com. It's a very catchy name and easy to remember, actually. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Leanne, for being here today with me on the Success Grid podcast.
Thank you so much.